more quickly review
I have
the permit.
some of the comments were thoughtful, and I want to ask about this issue that most of your time is spent with certain facilities. I hadn't thought about that. I've heard you say that to me.
First, I appreciate the question, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying that my time is not billed as part of the permit review process. We're talking about the engineers and the scientists who review specifically the materials that are provided and make recommendations to me. So to the extent that anyone is left with the impression that because there is tremendous political interest in a site and I have to spend time on it, that would somehow be billed to the applicant, that does not happen. I will say that it is true, though, that there are a small handful of sites that I put quite a bit of time into, and you know, that is the nature of running a program like this. I have yet to find anyone who is happy about the idea of having a hazardous waste facility permit issued in an area where they live or work or play. I also have yet to find someone who is excited about contaminated soil. Notwithstanding, these are really important functions that the department performs, and I appreciate the trepidation on the part of the regulated community about having to pay a fee for service in lieu of a predictable flat fee, which we recognize, all of us, does not recover the costs of reviewing the permits. I think it's important to note that right now the cost of reviewing those permits is borne by other fee payers, because there are other fee payers paying broader fees to the department that support general department activities, and those fees are funding the review of permits at this time. And I think many people would argue that that's not fair. I also would point out that even if we find a mechanism where we could agree on a new statutory flat fee rate, that does not address the point that Senator Pavley raised and that we were discussing earlier about providing some sort of feedback mechanism so that you don't have a facility like Exide that provided 11 substantive submittals in the review of their permit, which substantially delayed any kind of formal action on it.
All right, thank you. Good discussion. We will, again, hold open that item until for the future. And let's just have a brief discussion on issue number 3, which is department reform. And I'm particularly interested in this notion of a permanent board. Has much thought been given to what that would be like? Is that something that the department's considering?
With your patience, I'd like to just briefly describe the strategic program development proposal that's before the committee, and then talk about some of the questions that you've raised. I mentioned earlier that DTSC received limited term positions in 14-15 to develop and implement our permit enhancement work plan. Those resources make up an effective team that has had the technical expertise to understand and to re-engineer our complex regulatory programs. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, those positions expire in June. Recognizing the need for improvement across the department's programs, the governor is proposing to retain those 5 positions as a strategic program development team. The strategic program development team will work systematically through all of DTSC's programs and areas of service to design and implement real and measurable improvements tailored to each program's specific purpose. You asked about the idea of a permanent board of some sort, and that is an interesting question. I agree that public process is very important, and I believe there are many ways to encourage public participation in decision-making. There are potential pros and cons to having a board versus an independent review panel. We appreciate working with the independent review panel, and we look forward to reviewing their recommendations and implementing reforms that enhance our department's ability to better protect public health and the environment. I personally meet with community members and advocates regularly. I encourage my staff to do the same. We are evaluating tools and strategies to support more effective public engagement in all of our efforts, and certainly in our efforts to improve our performance. The proposed resources in the strategic program development proposal before you, as well as those that are in the Office of Environmental Justice and Tribal Affairs, which we will discuss shortly, I think, will work together in concert to engage the public in DTSC's enhanced delivery of public health and environmental protections in the future. In regards to your very specific question about whether I have been thinking about a permanent board, I will say that since I have been in this position for almost a year and a half, I have had an abundance of opportunities to brief the legislature, not only through budget hearings, but through oversight hearings, to appear before and discuss with the independent review panel our progress, and to meet with members of the public in a variety of forums, including periodic public meetings we have held simply to take input on our activities. I sometimes feel like I get past one opportunity to brief everyone on what we're doing, and I am already preparing for the next one, which is only a few weeks away. So I haven't personally given much time to how a formal permanent board would fit into the department's activities, other than we have had discussions about the possibility of a permit appeals board, which would provide both members of the public and permit applicants an opportunity to formally appeal a decision made by the department on a permit application.
I think the notion is much broader than that. Considering the concerns raised by many about the lack of or the insufficient public outreach, both prior to, during, and after one of these facilities is permitted, that a public board, such as the Air Resources Board or the water boards that we have, the water resources control boards, really, by definition, is public and allows for public testimony and issues and agendas. I think it's more than an appeals board, although it can act in that way as well. So I think I haven't seen any, I certainly hope it's not coming forward in any trailer bill without this committee having a look at it. So I'd just like to make that comment. But given the numbers of problems that have occurred with the department, I think it's intriguing and is worth a run through the legislature if that's truly being considered of that magnitude, a change of that magnitude.
I don't know of any bills.
I don't know. No, it would be an appropriate place for that, would be a bill. All right, I want to thank you. And there is no action being taken on this budget. We will be back. What I'd like to do now is return to the agenda. We'll start with the Department of Pesticide Regulation, which is page 2. And I know that we're going to lose a member for a short period of time, so I'd really like to go through the vote-only calendars for all items. For the Department of Pesticide Regulation, we have on page 3, 3 items. Reappropriation of the registration data management system, continuing the air monitoring network, and augmentation of the food safety program. Do we have any public comment? No. All right. I need a motion.
So moved.
Oh, okay. That's what we have. We have a motion for 1, 2, and 3. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
Those items are approved. I'm now going to go to page 16 for the vote-only items for the Air Resources Board. That is page 16. We have 3 items. Indeed. The first 2 items, Refrigerant Management Program Technical Adjustment. The second is the Air Quality Improvement Program Augmentation. Do I have a motion?
I can do that.
All right, it has been moved by Senator Nielsen. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? No. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, it is approved. They are approved, 2 to 1. All right, item number 3. Do I have a motion to realign the distributed administration?
Senator Nielsen.
I get it. All right. Recommended by Senator Nielsen. Moved by him. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, approved 3 to 0. And the last vote-only items are page 23 for the Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery, page 22, 23 is the,
23.
are the vote-only items. We have 2 of those. Senator Nielsen? All right, I would like a motion on the Extended Producer Responsibility Program Supervisor.
So moved.
It's been moved by Senator Pavley. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? No. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
Approved 2 to 1. Number 2, an independent hearing officer. Do I have a motion? I'll move it, but I'm a no. Oh, all right. Senator Pavley moves item number 2, the independent hearing officer. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? No. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
2 to 1. All right. There may be other items that we vote on, and there will be on the Air Resources Board, I believe. There are a couple, but we'll get to those as we get to them. All right. Mr. Leahy, welcome. Department of Pesticide Regulation. Let's do issue 1. Near and dear to everyone's heart, what are we doing for the bees?
For our pollinators.
I just spent an
And you
hour
can speak-
discussing bees yesterday, so.
And if you want to speak generally about the department, go ahead. I don't
Yeah,
need
I
to.
would, yes. Well, good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee members. Good morning, staff. 5 more minutes. Good morning. I'm Brian Leahy, the Director of the Department of Pesticide Regulation. To my right is Jesse Cuevas. Jesse is the Ledge Director for the department. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I've been asked to address 2 items. We'll start with the first. I have a brief prepared statement, and then we can get into questions if there are any. As the Director of the Department of Pesticide Regulation, I have the honor of leading the most comprehensive and stringent pesticide regulatory program in the nation. The department's mission is to protect human health and the environment by regulating pesticide sales and use and by fostering reduced risk pest management. DPR's work includes the evaluation and registration of pesticide products, environmental monitoring, residue testing of fresh produce, and assessing pesticide risk to protect human health and the environment. The first item on the agenda is the Pollinator Protection BCP, which is a request for 2 positions and $335,000 from the DPR fund to address the increased pollinator protection workload. One of the proposed new positions will go to our registration branch and help with the review, data studies. As part of the President's federal strategy to promote pollinator protection, US EPA and DPR now require more data and studies to assess and evaluate the potential for acute and chronic toxicity to pollinators. Based on the recent advances in scientific understanding of bee biology and behavior, the required studies to register a new pesticide are now 4 times greater than just a few years ago. The additional studies look not only at what happens when a pesticide makes contact with the bee, the acute toxicity, but also chronic risk to different life stages, risk to the colony, and also the toxicity contained in nectar and pollen. The other scientists will go to our enforcement branch for increased enforcement, outreach, and education on how better to protect bees. This position will be dedicated to continuing the work that DPR is currently doing to organize educational field events that bring together growers, beekeepers, and regulators. Over the last 2 years, DPR has held 42 training and outreach events. The quickest way to make improvements in pollinator health is to use education and enforcement to bring about best management practices that are already well understood and that work. These pollinator protection measures, along with others that have been put into place, are interim measures as we work towards a long-term comprehensive solution. DPR is working in collaboration with US EPA and Health Canada's Pest Management Regulatory Agency to complete a new risk assessment of neonicotinoids that is based on our new knowledge of bee biology and behavior. The partnership ensures that the required studies and methods and procedures used to conduct these studies provide useful and reliable information across all 3 agencies. This information will be used in guiding regulatory actions. A united approach across jurisdictions is critical as bees and beekeepers are not limited by state borders. On risk assessments, I can report that DPR is currently 6 months ahead of our legislative timelines to complete our reevaluation of neonicotinoids by July 1st of 2018. The preliminary results indicate that new mitigations will be required, and DPR will rely on its expert scientists in many fields to develop sound, effective, science-based measures. Bee loss and pollinator protection are complex issues, and we have to be careful not to reduce this complex problem to a single narrative. As a farmer who grew crops that relied upon pollinators, I am well aware of the importance of pollinators to our food system. I've also seen the remarkable progress that California's vigorous pesticide regulatory program has brought about over the last 40 years. But I also understand that certain pests will always threaten our health and our environment if not effectively controlled, which means that an effective pesticide regulatory program that protects human health and the environment and pushes society to develop safer approaches to pest management is essential. I want to close by saying that pesticides are toxic by design, and regulating pesticides is a balancing act. When neonicotinoids were first introduced, some were classified by US EPA as reduced-risk pesticides and a safer alternative to the organophosphate pesticides. Compared to organophosphates, neonicotinoids are safer for people, including workers and handlers, and safer for pets, mammals, and other wildlife. Improving pest management approaches always pushes science and our understanding of natural systems. DPR is always looking for ways to improve, and I welcome continued discussions with the committee on ways to improve. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Comments from LAO? No? Finance? Happy? All right. We all love the bees. I know that that there has been a real effort to understand nationwide what's happening to these pollinators. And I think the more that we can do, I appreciate the governor's proposal. I think rather than hold it open, we're going to act on it today.
Thank you.
But I hear some public comment.
Yeah, Paul Towers. I represent Bee Smart California, which is a coalition of beekeepers, farmers, conservationists, and food safety advocates, as well as Pan North America. We just want to thank the department for making bees a continued priority and fully support actually the staff recommendations outlined here today. Bees are critical in California, as stated, and we talked about in a hearing yesterday, represent over $11.7 billion in agricultural economic value in the state. And bee declines are significant in the state. We see losses of over 40% regularly. And so we need to take every step we can to make sure that we mitigate those losses. And the current path we're on a decent path right now, but we need to move more expeditiously to address those declines. The department began a review of some of the pesticides linked to bee declines in 2009. It's been, now 7 years, and we have seen no actual progress to mitigate against the effects of those products. So we're hopeful that the department will be able to move along the current timeline of the evaluation and mitigation of these products, but history often tells us otherwise. And so we believe that supporting additional staff to ensure that evaluations continue along the path is necessary. We also believe that we need to take more significant steps to restrict the use of bee-harming products, providing consumers with additional labeling and support. Many of these products are persistent. Research shows they can last in products or in plants for months, if not years at a time. So we need the information so that consumers can make good decisions, and we need the protections in place to make sure that bees aren't contaminated by these long-lived products.
Thank you. And next, please.
Chairwoman and members, Cynthia Corey, California Farm Bureau. We are fine with the recommendations here, except we have concerns about the issue being left open and the comments attached to that. Senator Pavley spent a large part of her afternoon yesterday in learning, yes, knocking her head down. We all heard more about bees than we probably had ever wanted to hear. But as she expressed, and Mr. Hill and Ms. Jackson, who all have citrus in their area, that moving too quickly on this and not letting the department do what they're supposed to do and have the scientists to do. They're on a timeline to do it. We ask that be respected and we not jump the gun. And so there's legislation that we discussed yesterday in Senate EQ, and there's a lot of concerns about, jumping the gun on identifying things as restricted will impede the effort that's going on with the ACP, which is the Asian citrus psyllid that has decimated the Florida citrus industry. We don't want to see that happen. So it's a complex issue, and we just ask that we honor what we've done and what the department is really trying to put in place. Last year, well, actually it was a couple of years ago, the Assembly ESTM and Agriculture Committee had an extensive oversight hearing and brought experts in from all over the United States, and we feel that the department is following through on that. Eggman had a bill that increases public forage land on public lands. We're working hard with DFW on that. So there's a lot of pieces in place, and we just would ask that you respect that and not hold this open based on the comments here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Matthew Allen, Western Growers Association. I'll be brief and simply associate my comments with those made by Cynthia with the Farm Bureau.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further public comment, the governor's proposal, we are very supportive of that, and to the extent that we want to see this move forward more quickly, I'm going to recommend approval of 2 additional positions so that we really expedite this issue as much as we possibly can. So that will be the motion.
Be sent to conference committee for the discussion.
Yes, but prior to that, you can work with staff on the exact language in the budget bill and supplemental reporting language. So, yes, Elio.
Christine Casey, Department of Finance. In regards to the augmentation, Finance is concerned with an augmentation, that it may have a negative impact on the Department of Pesticide Regulation Fund. The department has worked in the last few years to correct a structural imbalance by aligning expenditures and revenues.
All right, thank you for that. Any further comment? All right. Nonetheless, that is the urgency with which we view this issue. So we'll move.
I'd be glad.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, so move.
Good. All right, then we will augment the governor's request by 2 positions and ask that you work with our staff on the specific budget bill and supplemental reporting language. And as part of that, you can report back to us, to the budget sub next year on the progress in meeting the goals of the program. We hope that there is certainly an improvement quickly. So please call the roll. It's been moved by Senator Pavley.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, that passes 3-0. Thank you.
Do we need to
Issue number 2,
do is much more brief?
mitigation of pesticide impacts on workers.
Okay.
Thank you.
This second issue is very important. This BCP is for 2 positions and $482,000 from the department fund to address the growing need for DPR to develop strategies to mitigate pesticide impacts on workers and bystanders. DPR completes risk assessments on pesticides and when warranted comes up with restrictions and mitigations so that pesticides can be used safely and not adversely affect field workers and handlers. This is how we really control that pesticide to make sure it doesn't do harm. This BCP adds resources to the mitigation process. As DPR completes more risk assessments, we're at 5 per year right now, the need to mitigate increases. This BCP will help DPR mitigate faster and to come up with protections faster. In some cases, if the chemical is a toxic air contaminant, the law requires that or states that we only have 2 years to come up with these protections. So these requested additional staff and resources will help DPR develop important new mitigations protections in a more timely manner.
Right. Okay. Any comments from the LAO? None? Finance? All right. Any comments from the members?
No, I'm ready to.
From the audience? Any public comment on the proposals? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the governor's proposal? Been moved by Senator Nielsen. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
Aye.
All right, that is 3-0. That passes, and I think you're finished. Happy lunchtime. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. Now, I just want to consult with my... Which one?
I know, that's really close.
Get used to it. Board? All right, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Edie Chang, and I'm a Deputy Executive Officer at the Air Resources Board, responsible for our climate change programs and our budget. I'm going to start with issue number 1. These are budget proposals related to clean truck and bus standards, the Advanced Clean Car Program, and short-lived climate pollutants. They're necessary to support activities that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light and heavy-duty vehicles, methane from landfills and dairies, and hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, like those found in refrigerants. This work will result in co-benefits for air quality by also reducing smog-forming emissions such as oxides of nitrogen or NOx. AB 32 directs ARB to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020 and to maintain and continue reductions beyond 2020. Furthermore, as Senator Pavley well knows, state law gives ARB authority to set greenhouse gas and criteria pollutant standards for cars and trucks independent of AB 32. We must take action now to reduce emissions from these sources. Although methane and HFCs have relatively short lifetimes in the atmosphere, they are powerful climate forcers, and HFCs are the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions, both globally and in California. Similarly, our projections show that if methane emissions won't decline unless we implement new measures. If ARB does not take near-term action to stop HFCs and methane emissions growth, it will become increasingly difficult to maintain the 2020 greenhouse gas limit, much less continue progress. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from Mr. Brown.